The hostess looked Marcus up and down as if she were evaluating a piece of bad meat. Her eyes stopped at his stomach, then his sweaty face, and finally settled on the simple cotton shirt he was wearing. She didn't say goodnight, didn't ask if he had a reservation. He just crossed his arms and tilted his head to the side with an icy smile that didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "Sorry, sir, we don't have tables available." Marcus blinked slowly. He looked behind him, where there were at least 5 empty tables in the main area of the room. Then he looked back at her. The woman didn't even blink. "I was used to lying." "I see tables over there," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. "Reserved," she cut in, too quickly. "All reserved." He didn't move. He just continued there, standing at the entrance to Lumiere, one of the most sophisticated restaurants in Chicago, the kind of place where executives closed million-dollar contracts while munching on truffle risotto, the kind of place where Marcus Anthony Hale had built his fortune from scratch, but no one there knew about it. The hostess narrowed her eyes. "Sir, if you don't have a reservation, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have a waiting line." There was no queue. Marcus took a deep breath. He was 42 years old, weighed 200 pounds, and learned long ago that the world judged the cover before opening the book. But tonight was different. He had returned to Chicago after 3 years living abroad, overseeing the international expansion of his restaurant chain, 3 years away from home, and all he wanted was to have dinner in peace at the first restaurant he had bought 15 years ago, when he was still an unknown chef with an impossible dream. Now the woman at the entrance didn't even recognize him. "Can I speak to the manager?" Marcus asked. She sighed, as if she were dealing with a stubborn child. "He's busy, I hope." For a moment the hostess seemed ready to argue, but something in Marcus's tone, calm, firm, unwavering, made her hesitate. She spun on her high heels and disappeared down the hall. Marcus stood there, standing at the entrance, feeling the curious looks of other customers. A woman in a white blazer whispered something to her husband. An older couple quickly looked away, embarrassed. He knew this ritual, the silent humiliation, discomfort disguised as politeness. 2 minutes later, a man in a gray suit emerged from the kitchen, tall, thin, hair tied into an impeccable bun. He smiled, the kind of smile managers use when they want to get out of a problem without causing a scene. "Good evening. I'm Ethan Carver, general manager. May I help you?" Marcus held out his hand. "Marcus Hale. I would like to have dinner here tonight." Ethan shook his hand in a hurry, like someone touching something dirty. "Unfortunately, we are completely booked. Maybe another day, if you call in advance. There are 5 empty tables over there." Ethan's smile faltered. "These are VIP tables, for special customers." Marcus let the silence weigh between them. Then slowly he took his wallet out of his pocket and placed his credit card on the counter. A heavy black card with engraved gold letters. "I'm a special customer." Ethan looked at the card, then to Marcus. His face was calculating, evaluating whether it was worth risking scandal or simply maintaining house policy. He chose the second option. "Mr. Hale, I understand your frustration, but our restaurant has a strict dress code, and also health standards. We need to make sure all of our customers feel comfortable." Marcus felt his blood boil, but he kept his voice calm. "Health standards. Exactly." Ethan crossed his arms. "It's nothing personal. It's just, well, small tables, limited space. I'm sure you understand." He understood. "You understood perfectly." Marcus looked around the room once more, saw the VIP tables. He saw waiters serving expensive wine. He saw the crystal chandelier that he had chosen years ago when he renovated the place. He saw everything he had built being used to humiliate him. And then, Marcus smiled. It wasn't a surrendering smile. It was the smile of someone who is about to change the game. "I see," he said, putting the card back in his wallet. "Thank you for your time, Ethan." He turned to leave but stopped at the door. He looked over his shoulder. "Just one question. Do you know who owns this restaurant?" Ethan frowned. "Of course, the Hale Dining Group." Marcus nodded as if satisfied with the answer. "Great, just wanted to make sure." And then he left, leaving Ethan Carver standing there, not understanding what had just happened. But Marcus knew, and what came next would be devastating. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what this arrogant manager hasn't done yet, you know it's going to change everything. Marcus didn't come home. He didn't call anyone. He just walked 3 blocks to a 24-hour cafe, ordered a double cappuccino, and sat at the back table, away from the windows. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and stared at the screen for almost 5 minutes, doing nothing, just breathing, processing. 15 years. 15 years since he had bought that failing restaurant in downtown Chicago, renovated every inch of it with his own hands, fired the incompetent chef, and taken over the kitchen. 15 years since Lumiere became the first success of a chain that now had 43 restaurants spread across 8 countries. And the general manager of the place, the man he'd hired just 6 months ago based on impeccable references, had just kicked him out the door like trash because he was fat. Marcus clenched his jaw. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, more calculated. He had learned over the years that anger was useless. The anger burned quickly and went out without leaving any results. But the strategy was permanent. He unlocked his cell phone and opened the Hale Dining Network's internal monitoring app, a system he had implemented himself to track bookings, customer reviews, and employee performance in real time. He entered the Lumiere code and waited for the data to load. What he saw made his stomach turn. Recent customer reviews complaining about cold treatment, 3 labor cases filed in the last 2 months, and worst of all, an 18% drop in overall satisfaction in the last 6 months, exactly since Ethan Carver took over as management. Marcus narrowed his eyes. He had left the Lumiere operation in the hands of his regional director Claire Donovan while he was out of the country. Claire was competent, but perhaps she had trusted Ethan's credentials too much without investigating further. Now, Marcus was beginning to understand that this man wasn't just arrogant, he was dangerous. He clicked on the Reported Incidents tab and saw something that made his blood run cold. 6 formal complaints of discrimination, all archived, all ignored. A black woman refused because she didn't have the right profile for the environment. A Latin couple placed at the most hidden table in the restaurant close to the kitchen. A customer in a wheelchair informed that the restaurant did not have adequate infrastructure, even though access ramps were installed. And none of these complaints had reached him. Marcus closed his eyes and pressed his fingers against his temples. How had he let this happen? How had he become so far away, so disconnected, that his own restaurant, his first, his most important, had become a den of prejudice? He knew the answer. He had spent 3 years obsessed with international expansion, opening restaurants in London, Paris, Tokyo, closing contracts, appearing in business magazines, forgetting to look back. And now, his empire was rotten from within. The cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Claire Donovan. "Marcus, I saw you accessed the system. Is everything okay? Do you need anything?" He hesitated. Part of him wanted to call her immediately, tell her everything, fire Ethan Carver on the spot. But another part, the cooler, more strategic part, knew that wouldn't be enough. Ethan wasn't the only problem. He was the symptom. And Marcus needed to understand the disease before cutting to the root. He typed back, "Everything fine. Just checking some numbers. We'll talk tomorrow." Claire responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Marcus turned off his cell phone and stared at the coffee cooling in front of him. 3 tables away, a group of college students were laughing loudly, taking selfies. A girl with pink hair spilled soda on the table, and everyone laughed even louder. No one looked at Marcus. Nobody judged. There, in that trashy neighborhood cafe, he was just another customer. But at Lumiere, in the place he had built with blood, sweat, and talent, he was invisible. Worse than invisible, it was unwanted. Marcus took a deep breath and made a decision. He wasn't just going to fire Ethan Carver. I was going to destroy him, but not impulsively, not in an emotional way. He was going to do this the right way, the way a man who turned a bankrupt restaurant into an empire of 43 units would do, the way someone who understood that revenge wasn't about screaming would do. It was about planning, and the first step was simple: return to Lumiere. But this time, without being recognized, without showing who he was, he needed to see for himself how far the rot had spread. I needed to understand how Ethan operated when he thought no one was looking. I needed proof. Marcus picked up his cell phone again and called the only man in Chicago he trusted completely, his best friend since college, Daniel Rivera, special lawyer specialized in labor law, with an impeccable record of taking down corrupt executives. Daniel answered on the second ring. "Marcus? Dude, you're back? Why didn't you tell me? I just got here. I need a favor." "Of course. What is it?" Marcus paused. Then, in a firm voice, he said, "I need you to help me build a case against the manager of my own restaurant." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, Daniel let out a low laugh. "This is going to be interesting." Tells everything. And Marcus told. Every detail, every humiliation, every rotten number in the system. When he finished, Daniel said nothing for a few seconds. Then, in a serious voice, he said, "Marcus, if half of what you're telling me is true, this guy isn't just going to lose his job. He's going to lose his entire career." "Good," Marcus replied without hesitation. "That's exactly what I want." They arranged to meet the next day at Daniel's office. Marcus turned off his cell phone and finally took the last sip of his cold cappuccino. He looked out the window, seeing the city lights twinkling in the night. Ethan Carver had made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated the fat man at the restaurant door. I had looked at Marcus and seen only the body, not the mind, not the power, not the owner of everything. And now, Marcus was going to teach him a lesson no one would forget. The next morning, Marcus woke up at 5 in the morning, not because he had slept well. On the contrary, he spent the entire night tossing and turning, planning every move, but because I had work to do, and this work began before the sun rose. He took a shower, put on a faded t-shirt and some old jeans he found in the back of the closet. No expensive watches, no Italian leather wallet. Today, Marcus Anthony Hale needed to be invisible. He needed to be just another fat man that no one would look twice at. At 7 in the morning, he was sitting in the back seat of an Uber, on his way to Daniel Rivera's office. The lawyer was waiting for him with 2 cups of coffee and a stack of printed documents on the table. "Good morning, sunshine," Daniel said, pushing one of the glasses towards Marcus. "I stayed up all night reading the reports you sent me. And man, this is worse than I imagined." Marcus took the coffee and sat down. "It tells me." Daniel opened a folder and started leafing through it. 6 documented cases of discrimination in the last 6 months. 3 labor lawsuits quietly resolved with financial settlements. That is, money from your company used to silence victims. And there's more. I found a pattern. Ethan Carver has a track record. Before working at Lumiere, he was the manager of 2 other upscale restaurants. At both, he was fired for internal conflicts. Translation: he's a serial asshole and someone on your team didn't check properly. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Claire hired him. She trusted the references. False references, Daniel corrected. I looked around. He has a friend in the industry who writes tailored letters of recommendation. It's a well-crafted scheme. Ethan is good at appearing competent on paper, but in practice, he's a toxic wreck. Marcus took a sip of his coffee, trying to contain his frustration. So what do we do? I can fire him today, but that doesn't solve the real problem. He'll just go somewhere else and do the same thing. Daniel leaned forward with a cold smile. Exactly. So we're not just going to fire him. We're going to expose him, publicly, in a way that no restaurant, no luxury establishment will ever want to hire him again. But for that, we need irrefutable evidence. Videos, audios, witnesses, not just numbers on spreadsheets. Marcus nodded slowly. And how do we achieve this? You come back to Lumiere, but not as an owner, as an ordinary customer. If he treated you like that yesterday, imagine how he treats other people. We need to catch him in the act, and I have an idea how to do that. Daniel pulled a small button camera from the drawer and placed it on the table. This record's in high definition, audio and video, totally discreet. You use it, go back there, try to make a reservation again. Let him humiliate you. Let him hang himself with his own words. And we use that as proof. Marcus picked up the camera, feeling the light weight of the object in his palm. It was so small, so insignificant, and yet it had the power to destroy careers. What if he doesn't take the bait? What if he just ignores me? Daniel smiled. Men like Ethan never ignore it. They need to prove they're in control. He'll bite. Trust me. Marcus put the camera in his pocket and stood up. When? Tonight. Peak time. The more people, the better. If he humiliates you in front of customers, that strengthens his case. Marcus waved. But before leaving, Daniel grabbed him by the arm. Marcus, I know this is personal, but don't let emotion take over. You're going to go in there, you're going to hear horrible things, and you're going to have to stay calm, because if you explode, he wins. Did you understand? Marcus looked into his friend's eyes and nodded. I understood, but inside, he knew that staying calm would be the hardest part of all. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Marcus was back at the Lumiere. This time, he had the button camera stuck to his shirt right at his chest. Invisible, on, recording everything. He pushed open the glass door and entered the hall. The restaurant was packed. Elegant couples, executives laughing loudly, waiters circulating with trays of wine. The crystal chandelier sparkled from the ceiling, reflecting golden light off every polished surface. And there, at the reception desk, was Ethan Carver, talking to the same hostess as yesterday. The two laughed at something, and then Ethan looked at the door. His eyes found Marcus. The smile disappeared. Marcus walked to the counter slowly, keeping his posture upright. The hostess recognized him immediately. His face hardened. Good evening, Marcus said, his voice calm. I would like to make a reservation. Ethan crossed his arms and cocked his head to the side. Mr. Hale, what a surprise. I thought we made it clear yesterday that we are unavailable. I thought I'd try again, maybe there'll be room today. Ethan let out a short, humorless laugh. Sir, I'll be straight with you. This is not the type of establishment for people like you. Marcus let the silence weigh him down. The camera was recording every word, every expression, every gesture of contempt. People like me? People who don't understand the standard we hold ourselves here. Ethan made a wide gesture, encompassing the entire room. Our guests expect a refined environment, comfortable, and frankly, their presence causes discomfort. A woman at the nearest table stopped eating and looked at them. Then she quickly looked away, embarrassed, but he didn't say anything. Marcus took a deep breath. Discomfort. Exactly. Look, I'm not being cruel, I'm being honest. You clearly don't fit in here. And harping on about it is just going to make everyone uncomfortable, including you. The hostess next to Ethan nodded, as if agreeing with every word. It's true. We don't want to create an unpleasant situation. Marcus looked around. He saw faces turning to look at him. He saw whispers. He saw curious looks, some full of pity, others full of judgment. And then, he saw something that made his blood boil. At the back table, a couple. The woman was black, elegant, wearing a red blazer. The man next to her was Asian, his suit impeccable, and they were sitting at the worst table in the restaurant, hidden behind a column near the kitchen door, where the noise was constant and the light was dim. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Then slowly, he took his cell phone out of his pocket. "Ethan," he said, his voice still calm. "How many times have you done this?" Ethan frowned. Did what? He turned down clients. Because of his appearance, his weight, his skin color. Ethan's face hardened. "Be careful what you're insinuating." "I'm not insinuating anything. I'm asking." Ethan stepped forward, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "Listen here, fatty. You might have money. You might have a black card. But that doesn't change the fact that you don't belong in places like this. And if you keep insisting, I'm going to have to call security." Marcus smiled. It wasn't a smile of defeat. It was the smile of someone who had just won the match. "Okay, I'll go." He put away his cell phone, turned and walked towards the door. But before leaving, he stopped and looked back one last time. "Just one thing, Ethan. Are you sure you know who I am?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "You already asked me that yesterday, and yes, I know. You're just another guy trying to use money to buy respect. But here, respect can't be bought. It's earned." Marcus nodded, as if satisfied with the answer. Then, without saying anything else, he left the restaurant. But this time, he was not defeated. He was armed. Because Ethan Carver had just hanged himself, and everything was recorded. Marcus left the Lumiere with the camera still recording. He walked 2 blocks until he found an empty park bench, sat down, and finally turned off the device. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. The absolute certainty that he was about to destroy a man. He connected the camera to his cell phone and watched the recording. Ethan's every word, every expression of contempt, every arrogant gesture captured in high definition. It was perfect, incriminating, irrefutable. But Marcus didn't send the video to Daniel right away, because he realized something watching that recording. Ethan wasn't alone. The hostess had agreed with every word, and not a single customer in the room had stood up to defend him. The black couple hiding behind the column didn't even look suspicious, or prisoned, as if it were routine. The problem was bigger than a toxic manager. It was cultural, systemic, and Marcus needed more. He picked up his cell phone and called Claire Donovan. She answered on the first ring. "Marcus, finally. I've been trying to talk to you all day. Is everything okay?" He took a deep breath. "Claire, I need you to be honest with me. How many complaints about Ethan have reached you?" There was a tense silence on the other side. "Complaints? Discrimination? Abusive treatment? Customers being turned away for questionable reasons?" Claire hesitated. Then in a low voice he admitted, 2, maybe 3, but he always gave reasonable explanations. He said they were difficult clients, that they were trying to cause trouble. I believed him, Marcus. He's charismatic, convincing." Marcus closed his eyes. "He tricked you, Claire, and you let him. I let him. We all did." "What happened?" He told everything. The refusal at the door, public humiliation, the recording. When he finished, Claire was crying on the other end of the line. "My God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have looked deeper. I failed you. I failed the company. No, you were manipulated, just like me. But now we're going to fix this. Together." Claire sniffled, wiping away her tears. "What do you need me to do? How many Lumiere employees do you think would trust you enough to tell the truth about Ethan?" She thought for a moment. "There's Sophia, waitress for 5 years. She's loyal. And James, sommelier. He already mentioned that Ethan is too controlling. Why? Because I need witnesses. People willing to talk about what they saw, about how he treats employees and customers. Can you arrange a discreet meeting with them? Tomorrow morning? With you. Where? In my apartment. At 9. And Claire, don't talk to Ethan. Don't say anything to anyone but them. If he finds out we're investigating, he'll destroy evidence." "Understood." Marcus hung up and stared at the horizon. The sun was setting behind the buildings, turning the sky orange and purple. It was beautiful, almost poetic, as if the city was setting the stage for what was about to happen. The next morning, at 9 sharp, Sophia and James were sitting on the couch in Marcus's living room. Claire was next to them, with a notepad in her hand. Marcus poured coffee for everyone and sat in the armchair in front. Sophia was about 30, her hair tied in a tight ponytail, her eyes tired. James was older, maybe 50, with a neat gray mustache and hands that shook slightly holding the cup. "Thanks for coming," Marcus began. I know this is weird, but I need you guys to be honest with me, without fear of reprisal, without fear of losing your job, because I guarantee you, you won't lose anything, but Ethan Carver will." Sophia and James exchanged looks. Afterwards, Sophia sighed and placed the cup on the table. "He's a monster," she said bluntly. "A monster in an expensive suit. In the last 6 months, I've seen him humiliate at least 10 customers, always the same profiles. Black, Latino, fat, people with disabilities. He makes excuses. We don't have a table, the dress code, infrastructure problems, but we know. Everyone knows." James nodded in agreement. "And it's not just the customers. He treats the staff like dirt. He shouts in the kitchen. He threatens to fire anyone who makes the slightest mistake. 2 waitresses have already left crying and never returned. One of them even filed a lawsuit, but was silenced with money." Marcus clenched his fists. "Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" "Because we thought you knew," Sophia replied, her eyes teary. "We thought you approved, that it was part of the luxury image that the restaurant wanted to convey. And who were we to question the owner?" Marcus felt a crushing weight in his chest. He had built that empire with his own hands, but by moving away, he had allowed it to become exactly the kind of place he had always despised. "Do you have proof?" Daniel asked. He had arrived minutes before and was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. James nodded. "There's a group on WhatsApp, Ethan's Survivors. It's where employees vent. Prints of abusive messages, photos of customers being kicked out, testimonies, everything documented." Daniel smiled. "Perfect. Pass it all to me. Today." Sophia hesitated. "What if he finds out? What if he finds out it was us?" Marcus leaned forward, looking into her eyes. "He's not going to do anything, because by the end of this week Ethan Carver won't have any power, I guarantee it." 2 days later, Marcus was back at Lumiere, but this time, I wasn't alone. Daniel was at her side, carrying a black leather briefcase. Claire was right behind with his face pale but determined, and behind her, Sophia and James, nervous but brave. It was 10 in the morning. The restaurant was closed to the public. Preparation time. Ethan was in the kitchen organizing inventory when he heard footsteps in the entryway. He turned and froze. Marcus was standing in the middle of the room with his arms crossed. He was no longer wearing simple clothes. He wore an impeccable gray suit, black tie, and Italian leather shoes. His face was serious, relentless. "Ethan Carver," Marcus said, his voice firm and loud enough to echo through the empty room. "We need to talk." Ethan quickly regained his composure. He smiled, forced. "Mr. Hale, what a surprise. If I had known you were coming, I would have prepared something special. No need to pretend anymore, Ethan. I know exactly who you are." The smile faltered. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Daniel stepped forward and placed the folder on the nearest table. He opened it and started taking out documents, piles of them, message printouts, photos, transcribed recordings, signed testimonials, 6 documented cases of discrimination, 3 labor lawsuits silenced with settlements, 2 illegal dismissals, and this here. Daniel took out a tablet and tapped the screen. The recording of Marcus at the restaurant started playing. "Hi." Of course, Ethan's voice echoed through the hall. "This isn't the kind of establishment for people like you." Ethan paled. That was taken out of context. Context? Marcus took a firm step forward. What context justifies calling a customer fat and saying they don't belong? What context justifies turning away entire families because you don't like the color of their skin? Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marcus continued, undeterred. "You know what's worst of all, Ethan? It's not prejudice. Prejudice exists. It always has. The worst part is that you did this in my restaurant, in the place I built from scratch, in the place that was supposed to be a symbol of excellence and respect, and you turned it into a den of hate." Ethan tried to laugh nervously. "Look, I understand you're upset, but..." "Upset?" Marcus raised his voice for the first time, and the impact was devastating. "I'm not upset, Ethan. I'm disgusted. You're fired. Immediately. And that's not all. Daniel here is going to sue you personally. Every customer you humiliated will be contacted. Every employee you abused will testify. And when we're done, you'll never be able to work in any restaurant again. Ever again." Ethan backed away, tripping over his own leg. "You can't do that. I have a contract. I have rights." Daniel smiled coldly. "You have the right to a lawyer. You're going to need a good one." Sophia and James entered the room, stopping next to Marcus. Other employees began to appear. Cooks, waitresses, receptionists. Everyone silent. All witnesses. Ethan looked around, seeing the siege closing. His face went from pale to red, from confident to desperate. "You'll be sorry," he spat, pointing at Marcus. "You're going to regret messing with me." Marcus took a step forward, until he was face to face with Ethan, and then, in a low, lethal voice, he said, "I'm Marcus Anthony Hale." owner of 43 restaurants in 8 countries. I built this empire with dignity, and I'm not going to let a creep like you destroy everything I've worked for. You're finished, Ethan, and the only person who's going to regret it here is you." Ethan was silent, tremendous, defeated. Marcus turned to Claire. "Call security. Remove him from the building, now." And as Ethan was escorted out, screaming and crying, Marcus stood in the middle of the empty room, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of justice finally being done. The battle was over, and he had won. 3 weeks later, Lumiere reopened, but it wasn't the same restaurant. Marcus had spent every minute of those 21 days reshaping everything, not the physical structure. The crystal chandelier still sparkled, the mahogany tables remained polished, the kitchen remained impeccable. What changed was the soul of the place. The first change was visible on the door, a notice in gold letters on smoked glass. "Everyone is welcome here, no exceptions." The second was the team. Marcus fired not only Ethan, but any employee who had been complicit. The arrogant hostess, 2 waiters who laughed at the humiliations, a sous chef who made cruel jokes behind the scenes. In total, 7 people were removed, and in their place, Marcus hired professionals who understood the true meaning of hospitality. Sophia was promoted to general manager. James took on wine curation and service oversight, and Marcus brought back something he had abandoned years ago. He himself returned to working in the kitchen, not every day, but enough to remind yourself why it all started here, Willow. On the night of its reopening, the line outside Lumiere stretched 2 blocks. Journalists, influencers, old customers, new customers, everyone wanted to see the restaurant that had become a symbol of a larger struggle. Because Marcus hadn't just fired Ethan Carver, he had exposed everything. Daniel Rivera had strategically leaked details of the case to the press, the recordings, the testimonies, the filed cases. Within 48 hours, the story was all over the headlines. Restaurant chain owner exposes manager who humiliated him for being fat. Discrimination scandal shakes fine dining industry. Marcus Hale, the chef who turned pain into justice. Ethan Carver tried to defend himself. He gave tearful interviews claiming he had been misunderstood. He hired an image consultant who tried to paint Marcus as vindictive and cruel, but it didn't work, because the evidence was irrefutable, and the victims were many. 3 upscale restaurants in Chicago issued public statements distancing themselves from Ethan. 2 renowned chefs canceled collaborations they had with him. And in the final blow, the Illinois Restaurant Association board voted unanimously to permanently ban Ethan from any member establishments. He was destroyed, professionally, socially, financially, and Marcus didn't feel any pity. By Kirim at 8 o'clock at night, Marcus was in the Lumiere kitchen finishing a dish of saffron risotto with grilled scallops. His hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The noise of the pans, the smell of sautéed garlic, the intense heat, everything made him feel alive again. Sophia came running through the kitchen door, her eyes wide. "Marcus, you need to see this." He wiped his hands on his apron. What it was, "There's someone at the door, asking to speak to you, in person." Marcus frowned. "Who?" Sophia hesitated. "You better see." He went to the entrance of the restaurant, where a black woman in a red blazer was standing, with her Asian husband at her side. Marcus recognized them immediately. They were the couple who had been hidden behind the column that horrible night weeks ago. The woman extended her hand. "Mr. Hale, my name is Diane Carter, and this is my husband, Kevin. We wanted to thank you." Marcus shook her hand, confused. "To thank?" Kevin waved. "We saw the news. We read about what you did, and we realized that we were here, that night, when you were humiliated. We saw everything, and we did nothing." Diane looked down, embarrassed. "We were silent, because we were afraid of causing a scene, afraid that we would be kicked out too. But then, when we found out that you were the owner, we felt so ashamed, because you fought, and we were silent." Marcus took a deep breath. "You had no obligation to do anything, I understand. This kind of situation is complex, and the fear is real. But you weren't afraid," Kevin said. "You came back, you faced it, and you changed everything. Not just here, everywhere. Because now people are talking, reporting, demanding respect. You started a revolution, Mr. Hale." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't done it thinking about revolution. "I had done it because I was angry, because he had been humiliated, because I wanted justice." But now, looking at Diane and Kevin, he realized that their fight had touched something bigger. "I had given a voice to everyone who had ever been silenced. Thank you for coming," Marcus said sincerely. "And the next time you dine here, the bill is on me. Consider yourselves permanent VIPs." Diane smiled with tears in her eyes. Kevin squeezed Marcus's hand tightly, grateful, and then they entered the living room where Sophia guided them to the best table in the house, right in the center under the crystal chandelier where everyone could see them. where they always should have been. Good 2 hours later, the restaurant was closing. Marcus dismissed the team and was left alone in the empty hall, sitting at one of the tables with a glass of red wine in his hand. He looked around. He saw the place he had built, the place I almost lost, the place that was now truly his again. His cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Daniel. "They just called me. Ethan filed a lawsuit against you. Defamation, moral damages. He wants $5 million. Marcus laughed. Hi, alone in the empty hall. Then he typed back, "Let him try. We have enough evidence to bury him 10 times. And if he wants war, there will be war." Daniel responded with a raised fist emoji. Marcus put away his cell phone and took another sip of his wine. He knew the fight wasn't over. I knew Ethan would try to get revenge in any way possible. I knew there would still be battles ahead. But he also knew something more important. He was no longer alone. He had a loyal team. He had strong allies. There was a voice that echoed beyond the walls of that restaurant. And above all, he had proven to himself something that he always knew, but that the world tried to make him forget. Your value has never been defined by body size. It was defined by the size of the courage. He finished his wine, got up and turned off the lights in the room. He locked the door, and he walked down the dark Chicago street, feeling the cold night wind hit his face. For the first time in years, Marcus Anthony Hale smiled, not of victory, not revenge, but peace, because he had fought, he had won, and it had changed not just his restaurant but the way people saw the world, and that was the best twist of all. And the best revenge is not destroying those who humiliated you. It's proving that you were always bigger than any petty judgment, because in the end, dignity always wins over arrogance, always. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because stories of overcoming challenges like this deserve to be shared. Until next time.